What if I told you that EastEnders has just shown us the ending of Zoe Slater's story before we've even seen the beginning of her final nightmare? Because brand new pictures from Albert Square have revealed something that fans were hoping they would never see: Zoe Slater's funeral. The Slater family are gathering. Kat is there, Big Mo is there, Jasmine is there, Josh is there, Lily and Tommy are there. And suddenly, Zoe's exit doesn't feel like a rumour anymore. It feels real. But there's one massive piece of this story that EastEnders is still refusing to reveal. How does Zoe actually die?
And trust me, when you look back at everything that has happened since Zoe returned, there are some very uncomfortable questions about what could be coming next. Because EastEnders hasn't shown us the death, they've shown us the aftermath, and that could be very deliberate. For months, fans have been wondering whether Zoe Slater's exit would really end in tragedy. Now we have our biggest clue yet. Funeral scenes have been filmed, and the pictures show members of the Slater family coming together for what appears to be Zoe's final goodbye. Just stop and think about that for a moment. Zoe returned to EastEnders only last year.
And now, just 1 year later, we're looking at funeral scenes. That isn't a quiet exit. That isn't Zoe simply deciding to leave the square. This looks like EastEnders is preparing to give the character a genuinely tragic ending. But here's where things get interesting. The funeral tells us Zoe dies, but it doesn't tell us why. And that is where the real mystery begins. Think about the way EastEnders has handled this. The show confirmed that Zoe was leaving, but instead of immediately revealing exactly what happens to her, we're now being shown the funeral. So viewers know the destination, but they don't know the journey. And that is a dangerous place for a soap character to be, because from this point onwards, every scene involving Zoe can suddenly feel like a clue.
Every decision she makes could potentially be leading towards the moment that changes everything. And that's why I think EastEnders wants fans watching Zoe very differently now. We're not simply watching her storyline anymore, we're watching for the moment when something goes horribly wrong. But there is another detail from these funeral scenes that makes this even more emotional. Look at who's there. Kat is there. Big Mo is there. And Zoe's own family are surrounded by the people who have shared so much history with her. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part is seeing Jasmine and Josh connected to this storyline. Remember, Zoe only recently discovered the truth about her twins. After all those years, she finally learned who her children were. That should have been the beginning of a completely new chapter.
Instead, it now looks like EastEnders could be preparing to take Zoe away, just as that family connection was becoming real. And that's what makes the funeral so cruel. Zoe isn't leaving behind a simple life. She's leaving behind relationships that were only just beginning to develop. And for Jasmine and Josh, losing their mother after finally discovering her could be devastating. But there's something else. Because Zoe's relationship with her family has never been straightforward. There have been secrets, there has been betrayal, there has been pain. And now all of that history could explode emotionally at the funeral, especially for Kat.
Kat and Zoe have a history that goes far beyond an ordinary family relationship. Their lives have been tied together through some of EastEnders' most emotional stories. So if Zoe really is killed off, Kat's reaction could become one of the most powerful parts of the entire exit. And imagine the possibilities. Does Kat blame herself? Does she believe she should have protected Zoe? Does she discover something at the funeral that changes everything? Or does she already know more than she's telling everyone? Now, I'm not saying EastEnders has confirmed any of that. It hasn't. But that's exactly why this storyline has so much potential. Because the funeral itself may not be the biggest twist. The biggest twist could be what the characters discover before they get there. And Zoe's recent storyline gives us another reason to be suspicious.
Before we even got to this point, Zoe's life had already become incredibly complicated. She discovered the identity of her twins. She became involved with Andrew Trueman, and it initially looked like there might even be a chance of Zoe rebuilding that relationship. But Andrew wasn't exactly the man he appeared to be. He was manipulating people around him, and eventually Jasmine killed him. Now, EastEnders hasn't said that Andrew's death directly causes Zoe's death, so we shouldn't pretend that's confirmed. But from a storytelling point of view, you can't ignore the timing. Zoe comes back, she finds her children, she gets caught up in a dangerous situation. Andrew dies.
And now Zoe's own funeral is being filmed. That's an enormous chain of events, and it leaves one question hanging over everything. Could Zoe's death somehow be connected to the secrets surrounding Andrew? We simply don't know yet. And honestly, that uncertainty is what makes this storyline so exciting. But there's another detail fans have already noticed. 2 familiar faces were not seen in the funeral pictures. Zoe Slater wasn't featured, and Alfie Moon wasn't there either. Now, let's be clear. That does not automatically mean they won't appear in the actual storyline. These are filming pictures, and not every character involved in a story will necessarily be photographed. But when you're looking at something as important as Zoe Slater's funeral, fans are naturally going to notice who's missing, especially Jean. Because if this really is a major Slater family tragedy, you'd expect her presence to carry enormous emotional weight. So why wasn't she seen? Is she simply absent from this particular filming session, or could there be more going on? At the moment, there's no confirmed answer, and that is exactly where the speculation begins. There is something particularly cruel about Zoe's storyline. When Michelle Ryan returned, she spoke about how coming back felt like coming home. She had reconnected with former cast members, she had seen that fans still cared deeply about Zoe, and after years away, Zoe finally had another chance in Walford. She wasn't simply returning for a cameo. She was back in the middle of the story. She reunited with her family, she discovered her children, she faced new enemies and new problems. And now, a funeral. That's why this isn't just another soap exit. For long-time EastEnders viewers, Zoe represents a huge part of the show's history. So if the funeral really is the final chapter, EastEnders has a chance to make this one of those episodes that fans remember for years. But there is still one thing that could completely change our expectations.
We've all been asking, how will Zoe die? But maybe that's not the question we should be asking. Maybe the bigger question is, who will Zoe be with when it happens? Because that could completely change the story. Imagine Zoe's final episode begins normally. She's talking to someone, she's dealing with another problem, nothing seems unusual, and then suddenly something happens that nobody sees coming.